Hi everyone, today we're talking about plot because maps are important. Plot, like I said, it's a map. Just like you would open your phone and open a map app to figure out where you're going and how to get there. That's what plot does for a story. And why do we have to diagram it? Well, like I said, you need to know where you're going and where you are on the journey to whatever your destination is. And that's how a plot works in a story. It lets us know where we are in the story and how to get to the end, because that's the goal. And a story that gets stuck in a bad plot, if it doesn't move, if it doesn't go anywhere, well, you're not going to get to the end. And we have a plot diagram to help us do that. The plot diagram is pretty simple. It looks like this. And I'll show you what all these different parts are in just a minute later on the video. But just know that if you see this drawing, this little picture, we're talking about plot. If it's on the board, if it's on a test, a quiz, whatever, this is the plot diagram that I'm referring to. All right, so a plot, it's just basically an organized pattern. It shows us how the story unfolds and the events that make up the story. And again, it has to move. It has to go somewhere. A plot that doesn't do anything or go anywhere is boring, and you're going to close the book and set it down because nobody wants to read that. There are 5 elements. We're going to go over these 5 elements briefly. This is just an overview. I'll have videos later for each of these elements where we'll talk about them in a little more detail. First is exposition. This is your setting and your background. When and where is the story happening? And basically, what you want to know in the exposition is what happened before page 1. What happened before we started? Who are these people? Who's the main person that we're talking about? And what's going on? Where are we? When are we? Those sorts of questions are what you want to know. And this is where you're introduced to the main character and whoever's opposing the main character, the protagonist and the antagonist. I like to look at it as if we're loading a car. Okay, we're going on a trip and we're putting everything we need into this car. And so what are the things that you're putting into the car at the beginning of the trip before the trip starts? That's your exposition. Okay, who's in the car? What's in the car? Where's the car? Where's the car going? Those sorts of questions, looking at it that way, how is this story being packed and ready to go at the beginning? Here's some key questions to ask. When and where is the story happening? Who is doing the most talking, or who is being talked about the most? That's typically your main character right there. That's typically your protagonist. And there's a really important question here. What is the character's main problem? And we'll get to more of that about that question in just a minute. Okay, then you get to the rising action. This is where the problem gets worse. They face these challenges. They try to accomplish these goals or deal with these challenges, and they fail. Things get worse. They don't know how to solve their problem yet. And this is where we build interest and we really get to know the protagonist, and we see how she reacts to all these different challenges and all the different things she faces in the story. And we'll compare this later, how she's reacting now in the rising action to the climax. Again, here's this really important question. What is your problem? What is the character's main problem? That's key. If you don't know that, you're going to be lost in the plot. You're not going to know what's going on or what they're trying to accomplish here and what's happening. You need to know what is your problem. And then you got the climax. This is when they come face to face with their problem, their main problem, this main conflict, and they figure out how to solve it. It's this sort of light bulb moment where they are like, I get it now. I can do this. And they face their challenge and win, or they accomplish a goal, they mend a relationship, or they survive a situation or defeat an enemy, whatever it is, they figure it out. And this is where the protagonist becomes a new type of person. They're no longer the person who couldn't solve their problem. They're the person who can solve their problem because they figured something out. And they're different in some way because of that. And we see now how they react to this challenge and how they reacted to similar challenges during the rising action. That's something we can compare and contrast and really sort of get into what the story is about and figure out the theme. Then we have falling action. This is where they've figured it out and now they go about solving their problem. In the climax, they know what their problem was. They know how to fix it, how to solve it, the solution, and now they go about using that solution, fixing their problems. This is where we see that change. They've become a new type of person. It's the same character, but they're a new type of person. They're different now in some way than they were at the beginning of the story. In the resolution, this is where that change is confirmed. We see that they're a new person, that it's the end of the story, and everything has been taken care of. The protagonist is different at this point. We see that. It's clear. And this is a really good place to say, okay, compare and contrast. How are they at the beginning of the story versus how are they at the end of the story? Okay, we're looking at, we have the resolution. We figured everything out. We solved our problems. Now they should be different than they were at the beginning of the story, because at the beginning of the story, they did not know how to solve their problems, but now they do. Okay, here's how the plot diagram kind of works. It's supposed to look like a mountain. You've got this mountain where we start at the base and things are fine, things are easy, things are flat. And what you're asking is, how did we get here? Where are we and how did we get here? Okay. Where's the story taking place? What's going on? Who is the story about? Who are the characters? What era? Is this happening today? Is this happening in the Old West? Is this happening in ancient times? Is this happening in the future? That's your exposition. Then you start to climb the mountain and things get a little harder, right? It's not easy, and the higher you go, the harder it gets. That's your rising action. Once you get to the top, you've figured it out. You see everything clearly, and you can look back and solve your problems because you've got to the top. You've got to the climax. And then from there, it's just downhill. From there, you figured it out. Now you can solve your problems and make your way back down. And when you're on the other side, you're in a different place. You're a different person. The protagonist has changed, okay? And we can compare and contrast these two sides of the mountain, whether it's the resolution to the exposition or the falling action to the rising action, and really see what the story's about. And they do go in order, just to kind of show you that. First you have the exposition, which is usually pretty short. Maybe the first paragraph, maybe the first few pages. You don't need a lot of things in this. You don't want to spend a lot of time just talking about what happened before the book. We want to get into the story. So typically, when you're reading a book, the exposition is going to be short and in the beginning. Second, you're going to have the rising action. This is going to be the longer part of the book. This is where we get to know the character and see how they deal with their problems and what they need to change in order to solve their problems. And thirdly, we have the climax, which is where they figure out what to change. They change it and they solve their problems. And then they go about, during the falling action, solving those problems. And then finally, we have the resolution, where we see difference from the first of the book to the last of the book, from the way the character was at the beginning to where the character is at the end. Okay, here's your vocab. Each vocab has a sentence or two, just sort of laying out what this word means. And for example, exposition is where the author gives you the background of the story. Rising action is a series of related events that create suspense and interest. I also want you to pay attention to these bullets down underneath those definitions. For example, on climax, it says it's where the main character solves the problem. It's the turning point of the story. And so the bullet points down there are just turning point and problem solved. Looking over those bullet points, making some cards, some vocab cards with your vocab word and these bullet points on the back would really help you learn these vocab words. And then the vocab definition for plot. Plot is an organized pattern that shows how a story unfolds. Okay, so if we were going to diagram this on our plot chart that we've already made, it's very simple. Again, this is that mountain sort of image. So we would start here at the bottom and have our exposition. As we go up, we have rising action, and there are at least there's two on my diagram here. Sometimes there may be more little points. These are just representing specific events that happen during the story, specific series of events that contribute to the rising action, that make the challenge more challenging or the problem worse. Obviously at the top you've got your climax right here, and then this is your falling action, and then we have our resolution. Can't fit that. All right, so pretty simple. Again, it's just that mountain analogy, and this is how we chart it out. So anytime you see this, just know we're talking about plot. You could also go back in and label each specific thing and talk about the setting. You could talk about the setting, where it's happening. You could talk about specific challenges. Go back and label those, and you could even put page number, where the climax is, stuff like that. So this is very useful to use to help you identify specific plot elements and chart and diagram that for whatever story you're reading. And that's all. Thanks for watching.